Getting ready to crack down on the LS Swap Suburban today. I got a whole slew of parts ready to throw at it. I get 90% of everything I need for my LS Swaps on Amazon because I'm cheap. Let me show you guys just a little bit of some of the parts I've got. So we got some fuel injection, rubber fuel line. We got our Corvette style. This is a Wix 33737 fuel filter regulator. I got the Wix brand because the off brands usually don't regulate properly. Got this little barbed fitting, and then I got a bunch of these guys with adapters to barbs, and then I got an electric fuel pump. This was like a $25 Amazon Walbro 255 knockoff. Comes with the rubber attachments and all that good stuff. We got our new transmission cross member mounts, some more adapters, some hardware. We got some metal fuel line over here. We got our Dex Cool. Normally I run green, but I'm too lazy to flush the system out on the engine. The only thing I got to flush out on this is the heater core. And then more fuel line, oil filter. I got a box of oil because it was cheap, and 6 quarts. More coolant. And then I also got all the other stuff in the back of the Suburban here. That's from the Escalade. So got my tools all spilled out. Got the air box, the engine degreaser, fans, belts, shrouds, so all that good stuff. So we got a whole bunch of parts, and I really need to finish getting the transmission fully bolted up, get the crossmember adapted, and then I got a lot of wiring to do. I got the whole fuel system to do, a lot of stuff, but kind of getting a late start today. It's like 1 something. All right, here's an LS Swap wiring tip. If you're using a factory fuse box, in my case this is an 04, it's blue and green connector, drive-by wire. Here's what your factory fuse box looks like. Here's what the underside looks like. I'm going to tell you 90% of these wires are going to be discarded. This is block C1, gray block here, okay? We're only going to use 1 wire from this. These are labeled. You can probably see it on the black block later. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's letters A, B, C, D. So on this first block, where this orange wire is right here, this is A. So you have to put 12 volts key on and cranking power to this ECM on so the first gray block here, it's going to be A9. So A9 on block C1, which is this big fat pink one right here. So what we're going to do is, what I like to do on these old trucks is I find whatever wire would normally go to the distributor 12 volts, because you know it's going to have power when it's cranking and while key is on. I'm going to splice that wire into this wire right here. On this particular block, you're going to use pin F1. F1 is going to be your fuel pump 12 volts, okay? That's what's going to go to your fuel pump, make your fuel pump work. Pin F1 on this last block, and pin A9. Those are the only 2 wires aside from what's going into the factory harness here. This middle block, you don't touch anything. There's also a wire you can use for like the starter control. I'm going to be using the factory truck starter wiring, so I don't have to worry about that. So literally 2 wires on this block. All right, so I'm doing some inside activities while it's cold outside. I was telling you guys which pins need to be done, and I'll show you how to depin these. So when they come out, they look like this. And you got these little blue retainer clips. They literally just kind of slide in the side. I already popped this one out. There's this little tab right here. You can literally just pry these little white tabs back, and then the wire will pull out. So this little clip right at the top of each little prong. So I'm going to go through and depin all of these and only keep the ones I need, and I'll be back when I'm done. Alright, so this is all the depinned wires here. Don't need any of that. So these are the only 2 blocks that you need in the bottom of the fuse box, besides the one that goes to the actual engine. So this is that first one, the block C1. I forget what this one's called, but this is that 4th block I showed you earlier. And this is pin A9. And then this guy right here, this is pin F1 on that very last block. I'm out here working on the 75 Chevy Suburban LS Swap, and I just got the fuel tank out. Now the sending unit on the top side looks pretty rough, but I think it's salvageable. And I'm going to do a really cool trick. I've never tried this before, but I'm actually going to try to modify this to work with an in-tank pump. Now that I'm looking at it though, it might be a little tricky, but we're going to try something new. The inside of this tank is actually really freaking clean. And I think this is the original tank. I still had like the OG hose clamps. There might be a little bit of debris in there, but like the fuel looks really clean. So this thing was just running a couple years ago. It doesn't look like it sat for long periods. So I think the tank's going to be fine to reuse. But I want to try to modify this sending unit. I'm going to see if the fuel level sensor still works, and probably clean up the top side a little bit, get a new lock ring because that one got destroyed. And yeah. So let's make some progress. Made some more great progress on the 75 Suburban LS swap build today. So the engine's sitting about where it's going to be. Last night I got the harness kind of depinned, so I got my fuse box prepped for when I go to wire it up. Got the radiator sitting in here, mocking it up. And more importantly, I got the drive shaft in. I got the transmission crossmember in. I'm getting ready to top the engine off with oil. And yeah, it's coming together. I gotta do the fuel system, which actually I got the tank out yesterday. I'm waiting on a new sending unit, and then I can start running my fuel lines. But overall, it's coming together. Fuel system, cooling system, some miscellaneous like engine oil cooler lines, things like that. And we're going to be put together, and we'll be getting ready for a test fire possibly next weekend. So I got to hook the exhaust up. That's another big one, is the exhaust. But yeah, so making some progress on the 75 Suburban. All right, today I'm installing the modified fuel sending unit back into the Suburban for the LS swap. This truck was originally carbureted, so from factory the fuel system was only designed for low pressure. That setup works fine for a carburetor, but an LS engine requires high pressure, consistent fuel delivery. This isn't an upgrade, it's a requirement. I modified a newer style sending unit to accept an in-tank high pressure pump while still using the original fuel tank that keeps everything cleaner, quieter, and more reliable than running external pumps or Band-Aid solutions. The first step is pulling the old sending unit out, which is always a little awkward, but this one actually came out pretty clean. Once it's out, I prep the tank opening and get ready for the new unit. When installing a new sending unit, clocking is important so the float moves freely and the pump sits exactly where it should. Once everything's lined up, it drops right in and locks down like it belongs there. Now the tank is properly set up to support the LS. Correct fuel pressure, reliable delivery, and no shortcuts. Next up is finishing the fuel lines and getting this thing one step closer to the first fire. The other day I installed a sending unit to my 1975 Suburban tank that's been retrofitted for fuel injection. Today I'm running the rubber soft lines to the tank to make installation easy once I swap the tank back in place. This isn't the most ideal way to do this, as I'm just taking fuel injection fuel line and sliding it directly over the fittings on the sending unit and double hose clamping it with fuel injection hose clamps. The more proper way to be get AN fittings and adapters and all that stuff to make it more secure fit. However, I've done this on several other swaps that have been running like this for multiple years. I haven't had any issues with leaks or blowouts on lines, so I'm going to continue to keep using this method. As long as you have fuel injection fuel line and you run double fuel injection hose clamps, shouldn't be any issues at all. There's 3 lines I had to hook up in this video. The first one's going to be the large 5/8 line, and that one's just a vent for the fuel filler neck. The old one had like a metal piece and a couple of rubber sections that were completely rotted out, so I'm just going to run one long piece of 5/8 all the way to the fuel filler neck vent. The next line you see me hook up is going to be the fuel pump feed. So that's going to be coming out of the tank, feeding to the Wix fuel filter I have, and going to the engine. That one I'm using a 3/8 fuel injection fuel line. And then the last one you'll see me install is a 5/16 fuel injection fuel line, and that one's going to be the return line coming off my Wix filter going back to the tank. There's also a fourth fitting on a sending unit. That's just a fuel tank vent. And that one can be ran to a charcoal canister or like a one-way valve. For the sake of this video, I'm not going to be hooking it up, just the main lines. I made sure I left enough slack so when I install the tank, I can run the rubber hose over and hook it up without the tank being in the way. That'll make ease of serviceability better, and also just make installing it a lot easier. All right, y'all, it's about 15 degrees outside. It's just the temperature you start questioning your life choices, but here we are. Anyhow, the Suburban doesn't care how cold it is, and the progress doesn't wait for perfect weather. The main goal I had for today was just getting the fuel tank back in place. And sounds easier said than done, but it fought me tooth and nail trying to get everything lined up. If you're not sure or you haven't watched my last videos, I just want to go ahead and mention the tank has been retrofitted for fuel injection, which is why I had to pull it in the first place. Got a brand new sending unit, brand new high pressure fuel pump, and it's all set up for proper pressure that all the pressure in LS needs, around 60 psi. It's got a knockoff Walbro 255 pump, so not a shortcut or a temporary hookup or anything like that. This should be a pretty solid solution for modern fuel injection, and hopefully the tank works out just how I planned it to. But that's why you'll see me crawling around, repositioning jack a dozen times, sliding across the frozen gravel, and trying not to drop hardware with numb fingers. It all came down to getting the tank positioned right, getting the straps aligned, getting the hose routed, wiring, clearing everything, and make sure everything's actually where it needs to be so I don't smash it in between the floor of the truck and the tank sending unit. Well, if you're anything like me, cold fingers tend to slow you down a bit. But the last thing I want to do is rush because it's cold outside, because that's how I'm going to end up doing things twice. You know what the saying is, do it right or do it twice. This is definitely one of the jobs I've been dreading to do. It's definitely not glamorous or fun or anything like that, but once it's in, it's going to be a huge step in the right direction to getting this project one step closer to firing up. Now that the tank's all strapped in place, I'll be able to start running the fuel line, the fuel filter, and actually use some work on the top side of the truck and not be underneath of it for once. Well, at least until I need to do the exhaust, and that's a whole other thing. Anyhow, I'm just glad to have the tank back in place. I think the goal for tomorrow is to get the fuel lines and everything hooked up and hopefully run the wiring for it, get started on the engine wiring, and we should be a whole lot closer to hearing this thing fire. The Suburban's EFI fuel system is officially complete. All the fuel lines are ran, the filter is mounted solid, and everything's finally coming together. The setup I used for my fuel system is a variation of rubber fuel injection fuel line and 3/8 aluminum fuel line with barbed quick connect adapters and proper fuel injection hose clamps. You previously saw I installed the rubber lines onto the fuel tank sending unit, so today it was just joining those to the rest of the truck. I ran the 3/8 aluminum fuel line from front to back with only a short section of rubber fuel hose connecting the fuel filter to the metal line and connecting the metal line to the fuel rail. The longest section of fuel injection rubber hose I have is at the tank coming off the sending unit into the fuel filter. I used rubber line back of the tank for ease of access if I ever have to drop the tank, keeps from having to bend or break hard lines, makes everything a lot easier when you're trying to maneuver those things around. Once I got the fuel system buttoned up, I decided to knock out the transmission cooler. In a similar fashion to the fuel system, I used the same aluminum metal line for the transmission cooler lines and joined it to the transmission and to the oil cooler with proper ATF safe lines. With the transmission cooler hooked up, the fuel system in place, the only thing really left to do now is finish hooking up the cooling system, a few little wires. I have to wire up the fuel pump, mount the battery in the air box, and little things like that. I'm saying this, but obviously there's more things left to do to get the truck actually roadworthy, like finishing up the exhaust. I reinstalled the exhaust manifold that we had to remove when we installed the engine, but I still have yet to hook the exhaust up to the rest of the truck. That's going to require some clever fabrication. Overall, I'd say about one solid day worth of work before I hear this thing run. Well, darkness is falling upon me. I think that means it's time to wrap up the project for the night. Made a lot of good progress today. Fuel system's all plumbed in, transmission cooler lines are hooked up, and I think tomorrow we're going to try to button this thing up the rest of the way and maybe even get a first start. We'll see. So I'm getting ready to start running the wiring to the actual computer, tying the computer into the truck on the 1975 Suburban LS swap build. So what I'm looking for here, this is to the factory harness of the 75 Suburban. All right, this big fat red wire here, it's got this connector on it. This is what would be your 12-volt power supply to your HEI distributor. So this is going to have power key on and while cranking. That's incredibly important that it has power while it's cranking and while key on. So this is going to make the power supply wire for my ECM. I talked about this in an earlier video, so this is your fuse box here. And I already kind of took out everything I don't need. So this middle block gets left alone. This is all your wiring going to all the aspects of the engine, the computer, and all that good stuff. This wire right here, pin F1 on block C3, is the fuel pump 12 volt power supply. So this is coming out of the fuse box going to your fuel pump. If you hook this up and your security's deleted, your fuel pump will come on with the key and when it's supposed to. You just run this power directly to your fuel pump. The next wire that you need is pin A9 on block C1. This applies to the 99 to 06 Chevy trucks, all right? Trucks and SUVs. The vans are going to be a little bit different, cars are going to be different, things like that. But pin A9 on block C1, this is the wire that's going to go directly to that red one I talked about that would normally power the distributor. That's going to light up your fuse box until the key is on. Obviously everything else, you've got your normal battery wires and your grounds. Hook up all your battery wires and your grounds like you would normally. For me, what I'm going to do, instead of running the LS computer to engage the starter, I'm just going to use the factory wiring. This is the factory wiring that goes to the Suburban. I'm just going to run this to the LS starter, and the starter will crank like normal with the key. This wire ties in the computer. I have one wire going back to the fuel pump, and it's really as simple as that. Well, I done messed up, which I already knew I messed up, but now I'm finally getting around to addressing it. For those of you who are new to the channel, this is my third LS swap. Yes, I know it's covered in snow, is what it is. But when I was pulling this engine out of the donor, I got a little overzealous and wasn't really paying attention, got a little ahead of myself. And I snipped this section of harness clean off. All right, now here's the problem. This guy is my mass airflow sensor. This guy is my upstream O2 sensor. That's a problem. I need both of those things, and the dilemma is I have a lot of duplicate wires. There's also the downstream O2 sensor in this harness and also like an AC connector, but a lot of these wires are duplicate colors. So now what I had to go and do is pin out each one of these wires and figure out which one goes to like the IAT and MAF and which ones go to the O2 sensor for the upstream O2. And I eliminated ones I didn't need on this harness. Now I got to go through and I got to pin out each one of these with a multimeter back to the ECM connector and figure out which ones go to what sensor, snip back the ones I don't need, and so that's going to be fun. So don't make mistakes, guys. Double check everything. Like I said, I've done these swaps. It's my third swap. I've tinkered with countless of these harnesses, and that's the first time I've done that. So got a little ahead of myself, so be careful. Don't do that. I thought it was something else, and no, it was an important one. So now I got to fix that before I can fire it up for the first time. But let it be known, we're getting close. All right, so stay tuned. It's Saturday. I'm hoping to have it started either today or tomorrow. I know I keep saying that. I'm a little closer today, so just stay tuned, guys. I'm getting there. I'm working hard. Promise. Burning daylight, but we're gonna get there. All right, y'all, this thing is about to start for the first time. I got my extinguisher on hand just in case things go south. But we have no belt, no coolant, and I just primed the fuel pump. It looks like the fuel line's holding. So I think we're gonna crank it over and see if it'll fire. All right, we're about to start it for the first time. We got the second camera on the engine here. I already tested the fuel pump. It's priming. We'll roll it prime again. Here it prime. All right, we'll see if it's gonna fire. It has no cooling system or anything right now, so I'm not gonna run it long. No exhaust. it is. First start.